everyone to the Caffeinated Librarians. I'm Simona.
And I'm Amy.
And today we're going to be discussing The Dark Crystal, a 1982 fantasy adventure film directed by Jim Henson and Frank Oz. The Dark Crystal is the third film in our November Nostalgia series. So I'm just going to give some background, not too much for anyone who's unfamiliar or if it's been a while since you've seen the film. So the premise is that 1,000 years ago, the Dark Crystal was cracked. And this caused the ruling magical race to split into two species. So we get the Skeksis and the Mystics. And at this point, a young gelfling named Jen must undertake this perilous journey to locate the crystal shard and repair the damage that has been done to the Dark Crystal and sort of restore the balance to this world. And Jen is aided in his quest by another gelfling named Kira. So that's it for like the brief introduction as to what this film's about.
That was an amazing brief introduction. I feel like I've seen it again just now.
Thank you.
And I watched it through Netflix. I know we do have a copy at the library or through the system.
Yes, I'm pretty sure we do.
We will cut this out if it is not true. So no one will know.
No one will ever know.
So, first thoughts, weird. And did we know at the beginning that the two races split? Because I rewatched the intro because I got to watch this whole movie feeling like I missed something. And then I read all about it, and then I watched specific clips over again. I felt like I was coming into this like 2 weeks too late in the story.
There definitely is sorry, I can't talk right now. Lou will have to cut this part out. Okay, so there's the narrator of the story, and the narration is one of the loveliest moments. Like I love how it's narrated, and I did write the narrator's voice, the name down, but I forgot that now.
That's been lost to time.
Exactly. He does explain when the crystal was cracked.
Two races were formed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he calls, the cruel Skeksis with their twisted forms and their twisted wills. Like, I love the way it's narrated. And then the gentle mystics, and I forgot how he describes them other than gentle. But yeah, I don't believe they ever mention what the original species was. And I did write that name down.
Uru? No, I think something like Uru.
Skeks.
Right, because the Uru were the mystics.
Yes.
Good grief. Just another good grief for the record. If you're gonna name races, please don't make it their names too. Like, I don't know. I mean, first of all, I wasn't planning to refer to any of them by name, but if I was, I wouldn't be, because they all start with Skek, and it would be really confusing.
Oh, yes. Oh, you're actually talking about the actual
the character names.
Themselves. Yeah. I thought about writing them all down, but then
sorry.
I was like, never mind.
We've got Grumpy Dwarf. We got Grumpy Dwarf. We got Grumpy Dwarf. Sorry.
I didn't realize. I'm sure I knew they had names, but when you listen to the actual film, I think they're either known as the Minister.
Yeah.
What's the slimy character name one? The one that's trying to
That's what he's called.
I'm sorry, I meant
Chancellor?
To the voice actor.
Is he the Chancellor?
Yes, Chancellor. Yes, probably Chamberlain.
Oh, good job.
Yeah, I found his voice very annoying, and I know it suits the character because he's very he's simpering, he's weaselly, so it pretty much fits. I felt like asking. I wish I could ask the one who voiced the one who becomes the Emperor. because I wonder that voice actor must have gotten a sore throat at some point because the way like he's screaming or it's like Chamberlain, and like you must have had like a sore throat after doing this.
I'm sure.
But yeah, I always refer to them as like the Emperor Chamberlain or the simmering one and the scientist. I never even realized they actually had names.
I know.
So,
and they were supposed to be after like the 7 deadly sins. And then there were 10 of them. So then they just had to double up on sins. But, you know, there's so much. You read about this and it's like 7 years worth of movie that, I mean, I'm sure at least another movie was cut out of this movie. There must have been so much extra stuff filmed that they couldn't get into the final cut because it was just too long. But
and I think that's also why I'm pretty sure they had like supplementary material. Like I don't know if there are Dark Crystal comics. I've never read them, but yeah, the world, even from the little glimpses that you get, is very rich. Like when you try to learn more about the Gelfling history,
right,
and you realize how rich their culture was and where they currently are, which is just like the two of them. There's no other Gelflings around.
Right. Well, the novelization was written, I don't know by who. That's been lost to time and my internet page. But I remember that Jim Henson was very involved in the writing. Like he was definitely he you know, he threw down on plot points he didn't like. Like there was a Skeksis carrying a big bag, a hat of podlings, and they all tumbled down the hill and all the podlings died, and he felt like that was not necessary.
Yeah. I can understand that because from what you do glimpse of them, you pretty much get a good idea of the fact that they're cruel. But the podlings are adorable.
Podlings. I love the podlings.
Yeah.
Are they in the pod in that scene? Is that a pod that they are in? Do they live in individual pods? I have a lot of questions about the podlings. I do.
I'm wondering if probably the Netflix series that they created will address that. Yeah, I mean, the podlings, I always love the whole party scene, like, especially when you see like the podling that's banging on there goes, duh, duh, yeah.
I like the soup podling myself, the one that falls into the soup pot and like,
yeah. So I mean, from that brief glimpse, you know that they're fun loving. They kind of remind me of hobbits.
yeah. I mean, I think that it was like they were happy that Kira found someone that she could repopulate the race with. I mean, although they'll have like 4 noses, like a few generations down the road, but whatever.
See, now you're making me think. It's so funny though. I'm sure I had that question, like when I first watched this. Like, there's only 2 of them. So how many kids can they possibly have? It's like, and then their kids. Who do their kids marry?
Right. This is going to instill some questionable morality.
Yeah, but since this is a children's movie and we don't want to ruin the nostalgia, we'll just leave
We'll
those
just
for
let it
another
go.
time.
Yeah.
But I'm sure I must have thought of that the first time I watched. I was like, how are they going to repopulate?
Well, I also wonder, like, and I'm like hopping around ruthlessly because I could not get a bead on any sort of order for this movie in terms of discussion. Cause like, there's just like, and I feel like that plays into my feeling that it's just, there was not enough time. There was not enough exploration. They really they needed to simplify the story.
Yeah.
But the fire things, the race that's the blend of the Skeksis and the Uru.
Oh yes.
They look somewhat like Gelflings. They look a little Gelflingy, so maybe they could make Gelf higher power babies.
It's so funny because I kind of got the feeling like once they're joined, they sort of do like a peace out kind of moment and then just like go to wherever they go.
Yeah.
Which to me is, I don't know, like rewatching, I thought, so that's, you're just gonna leave them now? It's,
Wait, is there anything else that you need to tell me here?
yeah, I mean, I don't know, whatever. I guess they felt that Jen and Kira were competent enough to like get things rolling. But yeah, I always like the watching it the second, well, not the second time, but watching it for this podcast, I was like, you're just leaving. It's almost like, and what I hate, and I understand this is the whole trope about the quest, but I like how Jen's master is waiting until he's dying. And he's like, I should have told you this sooner. And
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, well, I'm not even gonna, like, I can't curse on this podcast. I was like, so it's like,
Yeah.
duh.
That
So
might have
like,
been important to let me know
but
earlier.
I'll jam all that you need to know and then boop, expire.
Right. And there's no
like,
time for follow-up questions because now I'm going to crumble to dust.
Yeah, and then he sends him to Agra, which Agra, bless her heart, she's not operating, I think, with a full deck. And like, and she, I'm sorry. And it's like, she like tells him, so you don't know what you're doing, do you? I'm like, well, obviously Jen doesn't know what he's doing. Just tell him what he needs to know. And he goes, but you have to know what it's for. And then the Gartham come in. I'm like, if time is of the essence and you're practically screaming at this poor guy, then tell him what he needs to know, and then he can
Give him the
peace
shard
out and do what he needs to do.
Give him all
it's
three
like,
of the shards. Go, shoot.
yeah, and then it was like, she gives him 3 shards. He's like, well, how will I know which one it is?
Duh.
When I watched it, I was like, how will he know?
I know. And I thought, and like, I must have seen this like when I was 12. And that was the last time. And like I said, at some point, not recording, I don't know if I ever saw this whole movie. Like, I don't know if I ever saw, I might have seen the whole movie, but I don't think I ever saw the whole movie in sequence.
Oh, okay.
So I thought, when he started playing and the crystal started not blowing, he was blowing on the flute, glowing crystal, got there. But I was thinking, okay, so the stone needs music. The crystal needs music to heal. I thought we were going in a whole different direction, but no, that was a one-off.
That's so interesting. I never thought of it. I mean, I always wondered how the flute, because it sounds like the melody he's playing, is it sort of a similar melody that when the mystics like make those vocalizations when they like what is it? Yeah, it's similar to that vocalization. So I can kind of understand where you made that intuitive like, leap where it's like music will heal everything.
Yeah.
But no. It was, I don't know, because there's no connection. How does that particular tune call to the crystal and whatever?
Well,
Did
I think
Aura really know which shard it was, and she was just being difficult and didn't want to say anything.
Well, the eyeball thing, I can't even tell you like how awful the eyeball thing is, and like I increased the amount of eyeball to like legendary proportions, and I was like, there's no more eyeball. It's like 10 seconds of eyeball, like when she pulls her eyeball up to look at the weeds. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it reminds me of another classic 80s film, Clash of the Titans.
That's what I was doing, because I figured it out that it was the goddesses who share the one eye. It was the fates or something.
Which, FYI, that scene never fails to creep me out. Oh,
too much eyeball.
So, yeah, so like, and I just thought of that too, because you did this, and I'm like, oh, wait, that reminds me of, yeah. And I remember, like, I remember reading somewhere that when Brian Froud was conceptualizing the Skeksis, it started out with the eye. So he drew an eye, and from the eye, he built around that. And I think he may have done that with all of the characters, where it started off where he drew their eyes, and based on the eyes, he developed the character more.
Interesting.
And I also,
no,
I'm sorry, no, go ahead.
The Skeksis bodies were fascinating. Both the Skeksis and the Uru. They're especially the Skeksis bird body, and you never see, like, they never like disrobe an Uru, so you don't really see what their composition is.
Yeah.
But like the bird body, and like they were so frail under all those clothes.
Yeah,
It was very interesting, and I kind of felt like one of them got the skeleton and the other one didn't.
Yeah, well, they always remind me of like when you before you cook a chicken and like because like they have like I noticed for the first time. This is amazing how like I can watch a movie so many times and never notice something, but I think that the Chamberlain had like a deformed, like, I think extra limb on his back or whatever. And I read something that they started off very beautiful, but gradually, due to their corruption and their lust for power, they become what you see now. Like this really deformed kind of creature. Like they started off very beautiful.
You see, that doesn't work though, for me anyway. Like, I feel like they would have to be, like, they started off, I feel like they looked like buzzards. I feel like they always looked like buzzards, and because that's what, like, it fits their personality. And okay, now we have to go maybe briefly, depending on what your feelings on it were, because Jim Henson was apparently into some very interesting thought processes at that point. Have you read the stuff about Seth Speaks? All right. It was fascinating and so weird, and I feel like understanding what was going on in his brain did not help me understand the movie anymore, but it helped me to understand where he kind of felt all of this coalescing from. So like sometime in the 70s, this woman, I think she's a poet or something, apparently was taken out of body and was what's it called, that, like, writing, like her body was writing, but like she was not present. Yeah, I know that word. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna assume that everybody understands what I'm talking about. Automatic writing, is it that? Maybe.
Probably. I'll look it up.
Google will tell us later. But she was taken to I don't know, like the inner structure of the world, like the Matrix, I don't know, but by some genderless being named Seth. I assume that was kind of what he called himself, his like nom de plume for talking to rando people on Earth. But I'm sorry, I'm in rare form today.
Ooh, okay, so
so
I'm enjoying this. Let's continue.
Okay. I made myself cry. That's good. So Seth is telling her about like all of the secrets of the universe and like the soul, and he like made his screenwriter and Brian Froud read this book. Like he had multiple copies, and he was like, "Here, read this before you start." And Agra, actually, that line where Jen says that his master is dead, and she goes, could be anywhere then, like influenced by that. But he was in such a weird brain space when he wrote this, that, you know, like all of these questions about, you know, life in general, and I have to find the full title of the book. I wrote it down. Seth Speaks: The Eternal Validity of the Soul. Yeah. So,
I'm just trying to figure out well, I'd probably have to read the book to figure out what the connection to the film is, like the overall philosophy of the film.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd have to read the book, and there's no way. There's absolutely no way. I actually watched, they had a video like that they did in around 1981 of this woman channeling Seth,
Oh, okay.
and it's interesting. I can't confirm or deny that this was really happening to her.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, she changed everything. Her accent was different. She sounded like kind of South African.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what that means. But you know, she clearly believed it, and like people were taking a class to find out what Seth had to say about stuff.
You know,
So
it's interesting because the 80s, wasn't it? And I'm trying to think where I'm, wasn't it kind of that time where a lot of these things were kind of happening? Like, because I know that the 80s for many people, there was a lot going on at that time, you know, politically and socially or whatnot. So I don't know,
yeah,
where people, you know, it kind of reminds me of how in like the like 19th century seances were
right.
very big. Was there something similar in this country at that time where I guess it made people so open to believing something like that? You
Well, I
know,
think the 60s.
yeah.
You know, the 60s was a very open-minded period, and
Mm,
you know, like it feels like, you know, the people our age are kind of thinking back to ideals that they
mm,
had in youth.
mm,
And you know, it might be the same thing, and like, and that sudden realization that the people that are marketing towards us now.
mm, mm,
And you know, and it maybe it's something like that. Like the 60s was so formative.
mm,
And I mean, there are cults all the time. Not to
yeah.
say that this was a cult, but
Mm,
you know, someone has this key to
mm,
understanding, and you know, and if you're let in on the secrets, you'll understand. Although, you know, and if you don't understand, it's probably a personal failing of your own.
mm,
Um, but you know, I feel like all of the symbolism he laid in, and you know, and the split races,
mm,
you know, that the Uru and the Skeksis um damaged something, and then
mm,
they were, and I had to find out, like, according to, you know, the fan wiki,
mm,
you know, they broke the crystal
mm,
in their greed, or I don't know what. And then they spent that 1,000 years like thinking about it. And then like they could not have been like, dude, this was a terrible mistake. We got to fix this. Like,
mm.
even if they were of a mind to, they're they weren't enlightened enough without their time.
You know what's interesting, but maybe I already answered my question after I'm saying this. Because going back when I mentioned how the Skeksis were originally supposed to be very beautiful,
Hmm.
um, it's interesting though, because I caught a few episodes. Netflix did the prequel story,
Right.
which is The Dark Crystal Age of Resistance, which is supposed to go into all the backstory, explain, I guess, what occurred. But when
Hmm.
you see the Skeksis in that series, they look very much as they do in the film, and
Right.
they're just as twisted. I mean, they're definitely among the people more. I mean, at this point, the Gelflings are still very much alive. They have their own races, their own kingdoms. And the Skeksis are almost like these benevolent overlords, so to speak. Like they they wander among the people and they sort of like are collecting tribute because like from one episode I saw they visit this one kingdom and everyone has to like play nice. So I'm really thinking back, unless maybe the series takes place maybe a few years out and that's why they're ugly looking like that. But it just reminded me what you said, how you didn't necessarily buy the fact that they started off as beautiful. For you, they're always, yeah, because in the show you don't see them as being beautiful. They're still very much the twisted kind of not yet cooked chickens, like the way they look. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It made me think about it.
This kind of harkens back to something that always makes me angry, which is like your physical beauty represents your internal beauty or lack thereof. And so I definitely feel like, you know, they couldn't have been lovely or even cute because they were twisted and evil. And
yeah,
you know,
and you
and
mentioning,
oh, go on.
no, you mentioning that reminds me of, because they've remade the film The Witches, and the, I don't know if I'm going to call it the Supreme Witch. The Supreme Witch in
Super
the
witch.
newer version, she has a deformity of her hands, which mirrors an actual deformity. I think it's like, I don't know if it kind of looks like maybe like a crab claw. I don't want to misquote some, or you may only have like 3 fingers or something like that. And that's like the reveal, like when she removes her glove, which I think is not present in the original film. I mean, they're definitely deformed. When you see the way the witches look, they're definitely not as they appear. And there was this group who basically took issue with that, with the notion how deformities being linked to being malicious or evil, which I guess is a pretty common trope that goes back like a long time, where, you know, I guess to make things easier for us, you have to sort of have that divide where, you know, it kind of reminds me, going back to the whole thing about like the Arthurian legends, how you're noble because of your blood, not necessarily because you're a noble person.
Right.
But the very fact of being nobility makes you good, and that's the end of it.
Right.
And, you know, you're always beautiful, and those who are evil are always dark and twisted and whatnot.
And disabled in some way, like Mordred.
Yeah.
And
so you reminded me of that, because that was the recent controversy. I don't recall how the director responded to that. He or she may have apologized and said that was unintentional. But basically how, you know, people with these conditions already have enough problems, and now sort of seeing it as, well, you know, the 3-fingered, well, you know, you must be a witch, which I'd like to believe that most viewers would understand that if you see someone with 3 fingers, he or she is not evil, but, you know.
Right. Well, I mean, that's not who we're trying to teach these lessons for, you know.
Yeah.
Like from Finding Nemo, they made this whole Lucky Finn organization for kids that have, you know, some sort of, you know, hand, like difference, I like that word. So that they could feel like they're not so different, you know. They have and they're like Nemo, and Nemo's awesome, and Nemo's brave, and like not like Nemo likes to kill kids. Like
that's his side
dark turn right there.
Yeah. Yeah, but I didn't mean to go off on that tangent, but that's what it reminded me of, because there was that controversy. This person who's part of this organization did bring it up. That's very disappointing that her monstrosity, or her I don't know if evil is a term, but I'll say evilness, is linked to those sort of physical attributes.
Right. And speaking of Camelot, I hated the music for this movie like nobody's business. And I'm coming off Labyrinth because just as much as I hate the music from this movie, That's how much I love the music from the Labyrinth. So, you know, I was kind of coming in like rubbing my hands together, like, this is going to be some great music. And it was just like, what stodgy old dude copied from the Camelot soundtrack? Like, especially like the Skeksis music, like the boom, boom, boom. Like, I get that it's not uplifting. I get it. But you can make music that's not uplifting without sounding like you lifted the track from something else.
Oh, are you referring, the Camelot film that you're referring to is that the one with Helen Mirren? No, no, maybe
I
not.
don't
Maybe
know.
I'm wrong.
I mean, I can't really tell you. I think it's from the 60s or the 70s. All I can tell you is that I rented the movie and my husband was just like, no. The first 5 minutes, he's like, I am not watching this. If you would like to watch something together, it's
Yeah.
not going to be this.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny because with the music, I don't know. I mean, there are some parts that I liked, but I can probably understand what you're talking about. I think sometimes it kind of come across very heavy-handed. It's like these are the evil people.
Right.
Like you could,
Heads up, guys. The ugly
yeah.
ones. They're super bad.
And I wonder also if part of that has to do with where this film was. I'm assuming it was marketed for children. I
There
wonder
was
if that has
yeah.
anything to do with it too. I guess to maybe make it, because also I read that the director wanted to terrify children. He wanted the Skeksis to be as terrifying as possible. Like, so when a child saw it, I was like, run. You see these deformed chickens coming your way, like run. He wanted them to. I swear to God, I think
Angry,
of, I'm
ugly.
sorry, I think of chicken meat when I see them.
Yeah, no, they totally are chickeny.
Yeah, so that was very much his goal. He wanted children to be terrified.
Right.
And
Well,
I
Jim
think,
Henson felt that children should have fear. Like that was like for someone who made like such lovable characters, he did not
yeah.
feel that children should be free of fear, that they should be able to experience it, which
Yeah.
you know, I get. Like, you know, seeing something harmless that is scary can kind of like maybe insulate you a little bit better for things that are in real life that are scary.
Well, now that you mention that, I was thinking back to the scene when Jen and Kira, during their travels, come across the ruins of this former Gelfling kingdom. And that's when the Chamberlain makes his appearance and he tries to appeal to them, basically saying, if I, like, if, come with me, it'll be okay. And you mentioned that it kind of reminds me of like a predator approaching a child. The scene, like now that you mentioned it, that's how the scene kind of plays out in my mind.
Yeah, it does feel like it feels slimy and smarmy, and you know he's slimy and smarmy.
Yeah.
But even the way they react to him
Yeah.
is just like, oh, there's something really wrong here.
Yeah. I mean,
And I'm sorry I
it's one of the
interrupted you
better
to make the
scenes.
noise.
I'm sorry?
Sorry I interrupted you to make the noise. I couldn't
No,
help
that's
myself.
it's fine. His smarmy noises. But
Well, did you see at the beginning, like another one like snaps at him for making the noise?
oh yeah, yeah. You know the character that I really like, and I don't know what his position is, but he's the one where after the emperor dies, which one of the things I appreciate about the film, and it goes back to the whole beginning narration where I don't know if it's probably alliteration is the wrong term, but when it says, the cruel, twisted, sketchy with their twisted wills and their, when you juxtapose the scene of the leader of the mystics dying, it's very peaceful. He basically becomes glitter and then like disappears. And then you see the emperor, that whole scene, it's probably one of the best scenes in the film,
Right.
where he's dying. He goes like, like, I love that part. Like, I'm still emperor. And then like he dies and he literally crumbles in on himself.
I know. I liked that a lot.
So there's the character that after the emperor dies is like, okay, well, who's going to be next? So you can almost picture in his mind, well, we got the Chamberlain and we got the other dude whose name I don't know, but he's the one that becomes, and
The
I love how that
captain, right? He's the captain of the guard, I think.
We'll call him that.
Yeah.
So there's the middle guy that he's just always observing.
Mm-hmm.
And you see his expression was like, oh, great. So we got this one and this one.
Yeah.
And he pretty much accepts, when the current emperor wins by the trial by stone, which I'm saying trial by stone, I'm a little disappointed.
What the heck?
Because it's them, and maybe it was the limitation of the puppetry. But to me, smashing a stone is not trial by stone. I was expecting something a bit more.
Rent in the stone is not really. Yeah, I know.
I was expecting something a bit more epic, but whatever.
Right. Because they're bad guys.
That's how they choose
let's
things.
chisel the rock, man.
So,
yeah, I'm with you. It was
so I loved his character because afterward it's like, okay, well, this is who we got. We could have done worse. So, and then I was always wondering, is the one that simpers even more, if that's even possible, in the Chamberlain, the one who wears like those fancy red gloves and like smokes and he's listening, oh, so rude. Is that supposed to be a girl? Like, I remember thinking, and I know it's not ultimately, it really doesn't matter, but I was just thinking, like, were they ever going to reproduce, or were they just like going to, like, it's just going to be the seven of us? Like, I don't know. I was always curious about the particular character because that's the one that seems to be enjoying life more. I'm thinking about the whole banquet scene, and she's like, ooh, and she's like, or they're picking at their teeth. It's probably, and I read something interesting about the whole banquet scene, which kind of grosses me out too, because everything hanging out and everything. But I read that at that point, the puppets were literally starting to deteriorate. So that was the final scene that they shot. And basically the people within the puppets, they were allowed to basically do whatever they wanted at that point. So that was almost like the cast having a free for all. So they were like ad-libbing and sticking things. And it was so interesting because at that point, they didn't have to worry about not damaging the puppets.
Right.
They were allowed to do whatever they wanted in that part. And I also read that the people that were in the Gartham suit, who are like those crab-like creatures, it was so heavy that they had to be suspended to be able to rest, to take breaks in between scenes. They suspended them in the air because it was so heavy, that they had to be suspended in order to rest. But
on the same vein, they said Jim Henson said that he could not, like, the puppets for the Skeksis and the Urus, the puppeteer had to like have one hand stuck over their head or out in front of them. And for the Uru, Jim Henson said that like they couldn't really hold it for more than 10 or 15 seconds at a time. So, I mean, the head platform when the dude's dying really makes sense.
Yeah. No, I mean, because I never thought of it before, but they must have been so like heavy. And, even thinking about like the people that had to operate, I saw one shot where it's the scene where Kira and Jen are diving off the cliff, and you see Jim Henson puppeted one, and the woman's like right next to him, and they're on a crane to sort of film that dropping down scene. But one of the things I really liked, it's sort of like a cute like girl power moment when they jump and Kira's wings open up and Jen's like, how come I don't have wings? She was like, of course not, silly, you're a boy. And so like her wings open up and everything. I was like, yeah, so girls have wings. So that was just an aside moment. I remember my sister and I were like, oh, only the girls have the wings. And at first I thought, well, how will Kira know that if she didn't have her kind? And I forgot that she was with her parents up until a certain point, so she would have seen her mom and other with wings. So, but I thought it was a very cute moment where he's like, I don't have wings. Well, but that's just
that's I really didn't give that any thought. I agree, that's pretty awesome. But and that Kira saved the day. Like she was the one that sacrificed everything. She was the like she did not have to kind of like swoop in there and get herself killed, but she did. But still, Jen is the hero.
Well, cinema may remember it that way, but I'm kind of reminded of Lord of the Rings. Now, I know with epic quests, there can only be one hero and he or she has, the helpers. I understand that. But let's be honest. And Lou, you can chip in here. Frodo would have been dead pages ago if it weren't for Sam.
Sam like held the whole thing. And
Exactly.
yeah.
Sam carrying him up that mountain, Sam encouraging Frodo. So Sam and Frodo are the heroes of Lord of the Rings.
And then they went ahead and
fans
killed
can
him in
come.
Stranger Things.
Yeah,
I was like beside myself. They killed Sam, Captain.
So in my opinion, Kira and Jen may have stuck the shard in the crystal, but he would not have been able to get to that point without Kira. So let's have a silent hurrah for the helpers of the heroes who are heroes in their own way. And that's how I'll end this. So Kira and Jen restored the crystal.
Done. And Fizzgig is awesome. And so are the Nefri.
I love Fizzgig, and it's so funny. He's listed as a character. There's a Percy Edwards was the gentleman that did Fizzgig. I guess I'm assuming he's not the puppeter. I'm assuming it's the voice of Fizzgig.
Right.
Anyhow, it's like all he does is growl, but it's like Percy Edwards as Fizzgig, and Fizzgig is listed as one of the main cast, which I found was hysterical. Not even the Skeksis, it's Fizzgig, but yeah, he's really cute. And Fizzgig is an unsung hero because he bites one of the sticks.
I know. I was thinking that too. And then he gets kicked into the pit.
I know. When that happened, I was like, no.
I know.
Into the pit, not Fizzgig. But Fizzgig survives. Yay, Fizzgig.
I know. That made me really happy. I would have fired the movie. I think I was like holding on, like, please let Fizzgig be alive.
Yeah, and I think in the series you see more little Fizzgigs. Yeah. I don't know. This watching this film is kind of making me at least want to check out the rest of the first season to sort of form an opinion of it. Because I admit I only watched like 2 or 3 episodes, so my critique is premature. But I don't know. Now I'm almost tempted to watch it.
I cannot. I mean, I think this is the very first thing that I've been like straight up like would not watch again. After like, because I do a lot of research for these shows. I really try to do a lot of research, and so I've spent a lot of time over the few days since I forgot about it and and then watched it, but really trying to get some theories and stuff like that, and usually I wind up having a soft spot for them, even if it's just because I did all this work, but it just led to more questions for me.
Yeah, one thing I liked when I going back to the show, which by the way, people listening, the show is available on Netflix. One of the things I liked when I was watching like promo trailers and they were releasing images of the puppets, was the different groups of gelflings, their cultures. That's one of the things I sort of was looking forward to in the show, because I like when, and I'm assuming a lot of detail and thought was put into coming up with these cultures and the different looks of the gelflings, the different kind of clothing they wear. So that's probably what wanted me. I can't talk.
That's what wanted me to do it.
What wanted me. Okay, that's what sort of made me want to try and watch the show.
Yeah, you want Gelfling rock. That's what you want. You just want Gelfling rock. And apparently, was it this movie or Labyrinth? One of the cut things was they meet a mining community, and that spun into Fraggle Rock. One, either Labyrinth or this one, probably Labyrinth. Makes more sense.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that's what kind of made me want to watch. And also I was kind of intrigued because going back to the scene where they come across the ruins, I was like, okay, this was a very rich culture. They had writing, they had art. So learning about the show, I was like, okay, maybe they're going to explore these things and we're going to get to know more about these gelflings. But I think it was the execution that sort of fell flat. And then, I said, the Skeksis, I mean, if they're gross in this film, in the series, they made them, if it's possible, even grosser, where I just couldn't watch it. I was like, oh my God, it's gross. But
and
I don't know.
That might be part of the reason I dislike it so much.
Oh,
is
okay.
that, you know, I have very little interest in the bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't need plot development on the bad guys. They're bad, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and you know, like, you know, they don't even have like any redemptive qualities. They just started out bad, they're still bad. Um, so if it was like no Skeksis at all, other than like Skeksis attacks
Mm-hmm.
on Gelflings and Podlings and, you know, all those
Mm-hmm.
things,
Mm-hmm.
I'd be much more into it.
Yeah. Because I know like with the show, there was a moment where one of the characters gets this vision, like this gigantic plant thing comes at her and gives her a vision of the future. And I'm assuming basically it's because of her and her, I guess, quest is probably what makes the Gelflings come on the radar of the Skeksis. That's what I'm assuming that the show was going with. Like, that's why the Skeksis decided to just kill all of them. Because from what the show shows, like, they were perfectly fine with having these Gelflings around as
It
long as
was
the
probably the
Gelflings.
prophecy,
Yeah.
because if
So
the
that's what I'm assuming
prophecy
it was too. Yeah.
says, you know, these guys are going to kill you, the first thought of an evil guy is like, well, we got to kill them all then.
Yeah. So, which
Okay,
is
so
kind
now
of.
that I've totally killed your ending, do you want to try again to say goodbye?
Well, no, actually, I wasn't. No, I'm sorry. I realized the way I worded it was if I was trying to say goodbye. I actually, no, I just meant the end in the end of, I don't even recall what I was talking about at that point. Oh, no, sorry. About the whole hero and the helper thing. No, I was just saying that was the end of my rant about the hero and the helper.
Gotcha.
But since we are, getting to that point, I guess I'll conclude with, it still is a good film, but I understand because it's one of those films where you can't just like lightly watch it. You have to be really invested in following along with the story. And I think for me, like when I mentioned earlier, one of the reasons why I had a hard time when I first watched it was because it was puppets. And this actually was the first film that did not have live actors in it. But I think once you do watch it, I think you can become invested in the story. So I would definitely recommend it. It is, a good film. What I do appreciate about the 80s, and I'll end it there, was that they had a lot of originality in their fantasy films. At least I think so. I could be wrong. Maybe there's other people that would disagree with me. And I feel it's kind of been lost in what we're coming out with now.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not like a remake of something, it's a remake of something else, I guess.
I
So
know.
yeah,
Yeah.
what I appreciate is the originality of the films. Granted, they weren't all perfect, but I think that's one of the reasons why I enjoyed this film and the other films that we watched and discussed.
Right.
So yeah, so I would definitely recommend check it out. It is available on Netflix,
You
and
can
I'm pretty
totally
sure
make fun of it.
exactly, and I'm pretty sure it's available in the system. So I would suggest you give it a watch. And thank you so much for listening to our November Nostalgia series. We have another exciting series coming up for next month, which I haven't named yet, but maybe it's for the best because I've been having trouble with that, like trying to figure out a theme. But yeah, we have more exciting content for next month. So thank you, as always, for listening to us.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye, everyone.